So, the idea is like this. It says in the Torah that that week of Parshas Shkolim, where we read about the half shekel, was also the week of Parshas Vayakhel. Now, this year fell out. When was Vayakhel? When was the half shekel? It was Kisisa. No, the week before. It's true, I think. Kisisa, ironically, the Parshas Kisisa is the half shekel, so it falls out right around the same time in any event. So the Rebbe asks a famous question. The question is asked: why does it say in the Torah it says that the half shekel, the weight of a half shekel, because in the olden days money was currency, and the currency was based on the weight. Right? Everybody used to weigh things. Today, the truth is, money is always a perception of value, right? If people didn't think that gold is valuable, it would be valueless. That's why it says that when Mashiach comes, that Madanim Mitzuyim may offer that the diamonds will be as plentiful as dust. So the Rebbe says, if you know how money works, if diamonds are as plentiful as dust, then the diamonds will be as valuable as dust. In other words, the true value system of the world is that everybody will have everything. Well, once everybody has everything, then the next question becomes what is meaningful, as opposed to, because most of what people, I heard this class once, most of what people value, a lot of what people want in life, it's very, very interesting. Some people have this personality, myself included, that you're very much driven not by what you want, but you're driven in a certain sense by not hearing the word no. Right? There's different personality types that this I don't have, but like if somebody tells them they can't do it, then they'll do it. They have this need not to hear the word no. And so many things in this world, particularly that's how advertisements work, they present an image to you, let's say of a car, and it's not that you really want the car. You don't need the car. You have a car. But you don't want that somebody else should have a better car. It's a subconscious kind of thing. The ego sometimes doesn't want to be lower than another person. Or even just to hear the word no. Sometimes a person can be driven. Kind of one of the things in my personality type is, let's say, if there's something that I might be driven by a project, it may take years just to get to the okay, wow. It's like a mountain. Somebody climbs a mountain. They got to the top. The only reason they got to the top of that mountain was because it was a challenge. But once they scaled that challenge, the challenge is meaningless. It was only the fact that they couldn't do it that motivated them to do it. But let's say you say to that same person, listen, press this button. And you go to the top of the mountain. He wouldn't press the button. He's not interested. So this is not a real type of goal in life. A goal that you're only doing it because maybe you're not going to be able to achieve it, and then you prove to yourself that you can achieve it. This is not a real goal. A real goal is something that you want to do because it's the right thing to do. It's something that you would say, even if I could achieve it, I want to achieve it every single day. So you have to ask yourself, first of all, stop for a second. We asked that question. Okay, if you could achieve anything in the world, there's no, let's say everything's technology. It's just a question of which button to press. And it seems like that's how heaven works. On earth, things are very much like, maybe you can get there, maybe you can't get there. But in heaven, as soon as you think about something, boom, it's there. So the question is, if you had that kind of power, the thought to create reality, so then the question becomes, okay, so what should I think about? And let's take a moment and actually maybe think about it for a second. So let's say for a moment, if truly your thoughts can make any reality, what do you want? So when a person thinks about it, if you could press a button and this is going to be your reality forever, very, very serious button. So I think everybody, an interesting time where people start to think this way is, ironically, when there's a book, I think the name of the book was, Sally Decides to Die. It's about this girl, it's just a fiction, but there's a point to it, that she tries to commit suicide. Ironically, most suicides are not successful. Sometimes people damage themselves very terribly. So Sally tries to commit suicide. She's somewhat successful. She created some kind of wound, so she's only going to die in a week. So now she has a week, and she's put into like a hospital or a mental institution. And she has a week. And in that week, she really lives. Why? Because, ironically, when this lady, she told me she was in my community in Plettenberg Bay, she had an illness and she was going to live or die, and she said it was very interesting to her because suddenly all the little things were pushed away, and all that really mattered to her were basically her relationships. And so it's an interesting, what they call thought exercise to do, which is to stop for a second and to ask yourself, okay, what is the, if I have to actually, and the Baal Shem Tov says this, that whatever we do in this lifetime becomes what we do in Gan Eden, and it becomes an Olam Haba, it becomes eternal. So basically what we're doing now is we're choosing our post in reality. What if we knew, I'm just going to close the door for the noise. But what if we knew for sure that we could choose a way in life, and this way is going to be the way we're going to live forever? So you would give it a lot of thought to what is important to you. What do you want? What do you not want? And I think that we're actually in that moment right now, because Mashiach is about to come. When Mashiach comes, in a certain sense, we know it's like, I don't want to say game over, game beginning, but certainly Bechira Kashas, choice in life is over. Because the only time you can choose between light and darkness is when there's light and darkness. But when there's no darkness, you can't choose it. It doesn't exist anymore. And it says that the evil will be hiding in the clefts of the rock, the light that will be there. The world will be so filled with divine light that it's basically game over for evil. So now we know that Hashem loves us. And everything He does, one of the most important things that He does is He's giving us free choice. What does a free choice give us? It gives us the ability to make a choice. Why is that important? What do you care? If you have a child, why do you care that they should make a choice? Because obviously if they make a choice, they're invested. If they don't make a choice, it could be the right thing 100%. But they're not invested. So what if we now are choosing our destiny for eternity? And we really are. Because Mashiach is, please God, going to be here. We know Mashiach comes in the month of Nisan. We got a couple days left. There's no question it's this year. So we're going to be in the base of Mikdash. And then it's not like, in a way, it wouldn't be fair. Like, people are not allowed to convert once Mashiach comes, right? Because, of course, everyone's going to want to convert. Right? Suddenly, Mashiach will come and say, I want to be a big Sadhu. Yeah, where were you yesterday? So the point is, there's a very powerful teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. And basically, it turns out, there's famous stuff that it speaks about. I just recently saw, even though the Litvish, they're not so into Kabbalah, this and that, but Rabbi Kamenetsky,
so he has them.
they considered by the Litvish, he was a Gadol, was a Kamenetsky. He recently passed away. I think his name was Rabbi Kamenetsky. In any event, he told one of his Chaverim, he says, learn Kabbalah. Why? Because we know that if a person doesn't learn the Pnimis of Torah, the inner dimension of Torah in this lifetime, they're prevented in the next one. You come here, you oppose this teaching, so okay, stick to Gemara. Poor guy, because the whole tainug, the whole pleasure in heaven is Pnimis of Torah, is the Hasidus, Kabbalah. And it seems very clearly, I think the Mashiach is going to be kind and he'll teach everybody, but it seems from the black and white that those people that were not involved in the inner dimension of Torah, even when Mashiach comes, they're not going to be allowed to study it. So, in other words, one thing we see clearly is that we have to choose our job description. You have to choose very carefully. This is what I do. This is what I'm about, and you have to be yourself. When Mashiach comes, you'll be your best self. But time to choose who you want to be is now. Now, this sikha is very, very, like we said, this sikha is very, very powerful and special sikha. And it's all about Ahavas Yisrael. So we talk about machzis shekel. So we know in the olden days we were speaking about that money was based on weight. So it says that the weight of a shekel was 20 ger. I think in 20 ger, so half of that is half of a shekel. And I think it comes out to like $27 today if you take it on like a silver, just the cost of silver. Now, the question is that why does Hashem say to do half a shekel? And the weight of half a shekel is half of 20. A normal person would say, I want you to do 10. The answer is, because Hashem, the whole reason we gave a half shekel was the unity of the Jewish people. In fact, it's a very beautiful thing because, I mentioned this before, that Paul Johnson is one of the greatest historians. And the chief rabbi of England, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, asked him, okay, you did this history of the Jews, what do you find amazing? And he said the ability of the Jewish people to have this combination of the community and the individual. Because most people, most communities, it's like we have in the West, or the American idea was like just individualism at the expense of the community, which is a very unique kind of idea. Most communities do the opposite. The community at the expense of the individual. It's Judaism because Judaism comes from Hashem, and Hashem has all good things. Like we gave the example of a chef that can make every good dish, and everything is complementing the other thing. So this is a religion. Right, that has it's. I don't know the right way to say it, but basically it has every single positive quality. So on one hand you have a Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash was a communal place. Communal place is very beautiful. You get together. On the other hand, you had individual sacrifices, but you also had communal sacrifices. And the communal sacrifices were paid for by the funds of the community. And every single person, whether you're rich or poor, couldn't give more or less. It's a beautiful concept when you think about it. Right? I don't want to compare Judaism to anyone else, but every system, and maybe the wealthy people give more. But here's a system that everybody had to give the same, because the sacrifice, the most important, we said this, that there was this argument, that I tell you this, that it says in the Talmud, a question, what is the most important verse of the Torah? Yeah. So, most important verse is as to basically offer the sacrifice in the morning and the afternoon. Why? Because that consistent prayer is the most important thing that you do. You can be totally enamored with God, but if you're not consistent, like you can fall in love. But if you're not consistently, I once heard this line, it's like a bumper sticker. I don't need a lot of love, just steady drips. You know, a person that gives their wife steady drips will be much better off than the most romantic guy in the world. You know, my uncle is a rabbi, big community, and so he likes to say on his speech that this one groom, he was falling over the bride, and the photographer says to Rabbi, this one's a keeper, like these, and eventually he had an affair with this, So what was he into? He was very romantic, but it was lost. He wasn't consistent. It's actually a very big problem today that with the media, many of the girls of today, they've been brainwashed to see this kind of almost the bad boy as somebody that's an attractive person. We're in public forum, so I don't want to say too much, but the point is that on the contrary, it's the nerd that's the best husband. He's the guy that's going to go to work. He's going to care because he's humble. So he's the guy that's going to be the best husband in the world, right? The guy that's he looks good and he's charismatic. Okay, you're one part of his big empire. He's got a big empire. So it's an interesting thing that this kind of, and back to Hashem, the humble Jew is the most precious to him, because that guy has the Baal Shem Tov loved the humble Jew. He says that the essence of Hashem is in the humble Jew. or the revelation of the essence, because Hashem is humble. So consistency is a very, very important thing. And we're finding now that we have these crazy ideologies, all crazy ideologies always have this problem, that they have nothing to do with consistency. They're not consistent. Because what they are is there's some kind of, usually some kind of narcissistic ideal, and they come up, and sometimes like communism, they can influence hundreds of millions of people, and then they burn out because the whole idea was ridiculous in the first place. It's happening in the West, like these crazy ideals of. A psychiatrist told me yesterday that the radical left, on the one hand, they're saying that you have to, sexual choices, the DNA of the person, this is the DNA. On the other hand, they're saying you can change your gender. It's like the whole thing is just so insane that you can't, there's like, you could never make this up in the biggest fiction. The people, Einstein was very worried about the future of the world. He said that, I don't want to say some of the things, but one of his lines is, he says, there are two things that are infinite: human stupidity and the universe. And I have my doubts about the universe. And he was right on both. Why? The truth is he's wrong, because human stupidity is not infinite. What happens is eventually the stupidity collapses on itself. It's like a cancer. Eventually it kills the host. And that's why it's very important in life. We say, "V'chaser satan molfenenu ma'afreinu." Take the satan. Satan is, Hashem made people in a normal way. We're like rational. But the satan has to leave from before and behind me. Because if I'm going to be too far in one direction or the other direction, it's not going to be good. So, getting back to the subject at hand, the idea that the Rebbe says is that, and this is a very, very, very important idea, for us to have unity, we have to understand that we're only a part of a puzzle. Because the whole thing is, this person once wrote a beautiful letter to Rabbi Mas. Rabbi Mas does questions and answers on Chabad.org. So, I don't remember the exact question, but the answer was very, very good. He says, men and women are different. Women were born into a relationship, right? She was the other half of a man. A man was born individual. So a man by nature, he's comfortable as an individual. And a woman by nature is comfortable in a relationship. We see it clearly. So, a person has to see themselves as, in a sense, a relationship that the main mitzvah of Hashem is Avas Yisrael, to love your fellow Jew. So, the Rebbe brings out a very important point here, which, like, I really haven't seen this point. We kind of mentioned it before, but it's very, very, very interesting and fundamental point. Which is that if, right before we're speaking about the unity of the whole world, because we're all serving Hashem, we're all servants of the same master. But here we're speaking about something very, very special, which is the unity of the Jewish people, because we're all literally one. What makes us one? Because there's only one Hashem. Now we gave the example before that you have the sun, and the sun is shining into different rooms, and it's one sun. But there's a difference. Why? Because when you take something physical, let's say you take the sun, and you have the light over here is not the light over there. You take money, and I divide 100 shekel into 100 coins. The coin over here is not the coin over here. The more physical something is, the more you can measure it. The less physical it is, the less it can be measured. So even something like love, it's very hard to measure love. Love is an attraction. How do you measure attraction? God can't be measured at all. So when you can't measure something, wherever it is, it's there completely. So when we say that Hashem is within a Jew, because he attached his soul to your soul, it's not like part of Hashem. It's the whole Hashem. Now this is a very interesting and difficult thing to imagine. There's only one Hashem. So you have many parts in different locations, and yet there's only one. So how do you have many parts and there's only one? So an example that I like to give for this is 1 plus 1 equals 2. It doesn't matter if you think it or I think it or you think it. It's the same 1 plus 1 equals 2. Because fundamentally, it's a spiritual idea. And that spiritual idea doesn't have a space. So right now, you're holding that, but you're holding the whole idea. 1 plus 1 equals 2 is the complete 1 plus 1 equals 2. So when I say that Hashem is within me, and He's within you, it's literally the whole Hashem. And He's literally within each of us completely. Now, how do you distinguish then between what is and isn't God? Which is an interesting question. So that's really what all of Kabbalah comes to teach us. There's such a thing called klipa. And klipa is a covering. So let's say this phone. Is this phone God? Okay, on some level, there's only godliness that makes it. But on another level, it's concealing God. It's its own little story. So am I 100% God? No, there are parts of me. There's my neshama, my godly soul, which is 100%. But there are other parts that conceal my animal soul, which wants cupcakes and cookies and chocolates. That's not God, right? So you have different parts. But if we accept that Hashem is the source, which He is, of each one of us, and there is only one Hashem, so that means we're literally at our very core one. There is no difference between. It's very interesting because I always had this suspicion, and I once saw the Rebbe say it, but it applies to everything as well. Why? Because in everything there's a spark of God, and you can't differentiate between God. So that means that the spirit in all people, in all matter, is Hashem. The Rebbe actually does mention this once relating to Goyim as well, right? That there is a spirit of Hashem. Maybe in a Jew, maybe in a revelation and stuff, but you have to say that behind everything is Hashem. So that means that really everything is one. There is no two. There is only one. Okay, we've said before that why did Hashem make differences? So the Shabbos, I had privilege to host this very special Yid, Zev. Zev is a guy of 77 years old, whose father came from Vienna, escaped the Holocaust, and kind of left the religion behind. And then Zev came, and he grew up in St. Louis without any real religion, and now he's coming home. He's coming back. It's a beautiful thing to see a Jew at 77 years old getting involved. One of the big questions is the meaning of life. 77 years to think about it. It's no joke. So I said to him like this, I think that the meaning of life, I want to say quickly because we said it before, but it relates to the conversation, is three things. Number one, it's Hashem's choice. Hashem is life, and Hashem chose us because He loves us. Number two, Hashem, this is an interesting concept that sort of came to me when I was telling you. Let's say you're going to have, why do you have a child? Why? Because you want to have a child. You love your child. So you have 10 children. You actually have 10 children, right? You have 10 children. Now, if the children didn't have something unique and special, it would immediately become a war. If everybody does nothing, it's not going to be good. So each person has to have a unique mission in this world. And that's Hashem made it. The Rebbe actually said that Hashem had to make it that everything has its own special mission. Otherwise, there would be kino b'maisa. Things would be jealous. If the moon and the sun did the same thing, like they did, there was jealousy. Why should he be the moon? Why should? But no, you're going to be at night. You're going to be at day. By the way, it's very interesting. We know that when Mashiach comes, the light of the moon will be as great as the light of the sun. Scientifically, the moon gives off certain rays, which we don't see, that are as bright, they're brighter than the sun. So there are rays from the moon right now on Earth that are bright. In fact, there's a radiation, for instance, background radiation for the Big Bang, of an incredible light. It's just on a frequency that we can't see. So, which is interesting because we speak about in Chassidus the idea of a Reshima, a background radiation that perceives everything. But that's another conversation. So Hashem, gives us all a special role. We are Yidden, right? Another person's a tree. You could be a male, you could be a female. And as the Arizal, we're in the city of the Arizal says clearly that there are two types of souls. One is the master of Torah, right? So as I mentioned, it's not, my father's a rabbi, his father was sent this. Well, so it made sense. This is my destiny. It wasn't that I chose this. My destiny chose me. And you obviously are a master of good deeds. As we see, you're helping me out here. But that's it. And I see it very clearly. The person in the world is able to do chesed better than the rabbis. They're better at it. They're masters of good deeds. But the rabbis can teach Torah better than them. Everybody has their mission in this world. And obviously a woman can give birth better than a man. And that's her mission. And the Rebbe speaks very clearly that people feel good when they fulfill their mission. It's very clear. Because we have innate talents and gifts. And those things are the greatest things you can offer the world. I don't care if a woman is the greatest biologist in the world. It's not going to compare to actually doing what biology does. Having 10 kids and bring that into the world is going to be much more significant, unless somehow, which I don't think has ever happened, maybe, I don't know, but 99.9% of the time, just having children would be a greater accomplishment than any other kind of physical. So everybody has their mission, and to the extent that we really do it, and this is a very, very, very important part of life, which is, I think I put it out on one of my little videos. I'm going to put it out. Everybody's looking to be happy. But being happy is not so complicated. If you do good, you feel good. Because you have to do it. Right? So an example I like to give sometimes I have a website, a blog, and it makes me happy. I don't get anything out of it. But if I can spread chassidus and I can teach another Jew, and I know that I inspired someone, that makes me happy. So the trick of happiness is giving your gift to the world. And a person has to literally think about it. And sometimes this doesn't have to be, sometimes it could be whatever. I'm a master of good deeds. It's going to come my way, this and that. Your wife. These are the primary good deeds that you have. But the bottom line is that these are the things. But last but not least, in terms of life, we have, and tomorrow we'll talk a little bit more about the Sifra. This is a very powerful Sifra, a lot of details. But we have a personal relationship with Hashem. Hashem loves us all unconditionally. And so within this world, we're always, so it's a very beautiful way of looking at life. I think if we look at life in this way, we really heal the world. Why? Because the first thing is that you matter unconditionally. You don't matter conditionally to God. Most people's issues in life, I think, is because they don't realize that they have an unconditional value. Somewhere along the line, somebody once told me this line: God made it that we should love people and use things. Sometimes we change it around. So why do people change it around? Because somebody made them feel like you're not unconditionally valued. That's why there's nothing. This guy told me an interesting thing. He was like a social worker. He said there's a theory among social workers, which they deal with this, that even abusive parents are better than foster parents. You can have good foster parents, but nothing can compare to that unconditional love. So the guy has issues. He's a father, let's say, and he's got anger issues, and he's taka bad. He shouldn't be a bad person. But at the same time, this is where the Western world is so bad, because it looks at everything in a radical way. It doesn't have the nuances of life. Like in the Torah, okay, a person steals, don't chop off his hands as they do in Saudi Arabia. On the other hand, in Saudi Arabia, you could literally leave gold on the table and no one's going to touch it. But, so, the point is, you pay back double. It's very smart. It's a simple incentive to not steal. But the thing is, in a certain sense, this the nuances of how to get it right is very complicated, because there has to be law and order. But how do you make it right? So it's easy to be too lenient, right? The left is going crazy, let people steal, which then creates, obviously violence, and on the other hand, you can be too harsh. So the Torah is the only thing that's coming with the perfect idea. So when a person has the feeling, and this in a certain sense, it's only somebody that looks at somebody else in the way that they are like me. That's what the Rambam says. Why is there more love in families than there are among strangers? Because families share blood. So the person is like you. So this is the real idea of Avos Yisrael, which is the idea to understand that this person has my neshama. There's only one neshama and they have my neshama. So once a person can get to that idea that the only reason we exist is because Hashem loves us unconditionally. So they don't have many people are made to feel like you only are valuable if you provide something, right, for someone else. And so they become very much, don't call it a perfectionist or this and that. But that sense that my value, I don't need you to validate me. I am valuable without your validation, right? And so, and of course, I think a lot of what bullying really is about that a person needs to feel valuable, unconditional regard, unconditionally valuable. And so the people that don't feel that have been shamed in some way get jealous of the people that do feel that, and that's why there's anti-Semitism and anti-West. It doesn't make any sense. Suddenly the whole world, if you, from any perspective that you want to look at it, why would people be against, let's say, Jews, that from every rational perspective are the kindest people, the best? It can only be a jealousy of why these people are feeling good about themselves, and the person feels bad, and then the mind rationalizes some kind of, they do this, and therefore I can. If you look at what behind anti-Semitism is about shaming. Right? And all of the shaming of Israel, the shaming of the West, it all comes from one thing. It comes from a person who doesn't feel valid and is jealous of the people that do feel valid. And it's a way of trying to make them feel unvalid. And so getting back to the point is that a human being has to know that the reason you exist, you don't have to do anything to be valid. Existence makes you valid. In fact, that's one of the beautiful ideas of America, which is the idea that everybody is created by Hashem, and you have inalienable rights. You automatically have rights. I once saw this interesting thing that this guy, a journalist from the north, went down. He interviewed a slave in the south. So you hear it, and so he was kind of more liberal, which is obviously the right thing. He's like against slavery. So he tells the guy, like, don't worry, we're gonna free you. We're gonna help you out here. So he said, you can't free me. I was born free. It's a very profound part. And that's really what Yiddishkeit did. The Maharal of Prague says this, that since Hashem took us out of Egypt, the Jewish people became an intrinsically free people. Nobody can enslave them. That's actually what made many nations so upset about the Jews. Right? Because they could always use bullying and fear to enslave them. But, when Rabbi Kamenetsky came to the Nefer B'Trust in this crazy war, Putin should end it, and there should only be shalom and peace in the world. But when he came there, this came to a Jew, and he said, well, it's kind of schmoozing, and then finally the guy says, are you Chabad? And he says, yes. He says, get out of here. Okay, leave. So later the guy started to become part of his community, and he said, what happened there? He says, before you came, KGB came to me and they said Chabad is coming to the city, but don't go to them. He was an important guy in the community. So why not? They're religious. So what? Eventually, this from the KGB, they said they have no fear. So this is the Romans also. The ancient Romans said that the only people that you couldn't torture into submission were the Jews. Why? Because Hashem, the Maharal of Prague said that Hashem made us intrinsically a free person. In fact, the Shalah says that a Yid has Bechira Chafsh. You can never force a Jew. That's even into Torah Mitzvahs. He has real Bechira. So everything has to be done in a way of encouragement. And so just to conclude, the bottom line is that Hashem chose us. We exist unconditionally because He loves us. Number 2, we all have a special mission. And number 3, that Hashem is infinite, and so therefore, in our mission and in our reality, we can always learn more. And that's the whole idea of the Baal Shem Tov, that the Eibush is always communicating to us. There's even a thought in the mind, And this way we're always, this world becomes really the Dinner B'Taftim, the garden of Hashem, what he wanted, which is that we should all make it better and better and better. And this is a way of getting real unity. And tomorrow we'll speak a little bit, the Rebbe says that in a way the real unity has to begin between yourself and Hashem. Some other very nice things about Maidani. The Chayim L'Vracha.